Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is tie. And this is another suggestion from Luis. I just want to say a quick thank you for that. Now, let's take a look at some of the ways that we use the verb tie. The first way you might hear or see it used is to mean to attach or fasten someone or something with string. Sort of connected to this idea is making a knot. The best way I thought I could illustrate this first definition was with a picture. So if you look at the bottom right hand corner of the screen, you see a person bending down on the ground, right? And they're tying their shoelaces. So we can see kind of that idea. They're crossing that string. Eventually, they'll make a knot. A second way the verb tie gets used can mean to restrict or limit someone to a particular situation or a place. I have a student who has shared with me they're not super excited about where they're presently living, but they need to stay there because their spouse is attending school and very close to finishing a particular program. So they are tied to this particular state or this area for another few months until their spouse graduates. A third way the verb tie gets used can mean to connect or link. Sometimes, again, if you watch movies or TV shows where there's a crime being investigated, you might see a piece of evidence that connects, right? You might hear a character, an investigator, a police officer of some kind say, "This ties so and so to the crime." It connects or it links them. A fourth way you might hear the verb tie used can mean to achieve the same score or even the same ranking as another competitor, if it's kind of a one-on-one type of thing, or as another team. You should know that tie is a regular verb. We're going to have kind of an odd spelling change as we make our progressive form, and that's because here we have a verb that ends with two vowel letters. So I can't just add ing to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the I and E, replace it with the letter Y, and then add ing. That forms tying. Okay. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding the letter D since the verb already ends with an E. Now our base verb, tie, ends with a vowel sound. That's a long I sound. All vowel sounds are voiced sounds. So this means the past tense ending is just going to make a D sound, and I'm not going to add an extra syllable as I say it. So it should sound like this: tied, tied. Okay. Now let's move on and talk about some phrasal verbs. There are actually a large number of phrasal verbs with our verb tie, so we'll be focusing on these today. The first one we'll discuss is to tie down. This can mean that we're securing something, maybe with a rope, a string, some kind of other object. An example of this might be tie down the furniture in the back of the truck. This sentence is an example of an imperative. I'm giving a command to someone, telling them what to do. So here, maybe I don't want the furniture to move around as we're driving the truck, right? I want it to stay in place, so we're going to secure it. Another way to use tie down can mean to restrain someone or something from independence. Might mean that they have some type of obligation. An example of this: as a CPA, tax season ties her down from mid-January to mid-April. So there might be some words here that are a little new or different. CPA stands for Certified Public Accountant. So this is someone who has passed a series of tests, knows a great deal about accounting rules and procedures. This is a certification here in the United States. And some CPAs specialize in taxation. And individual income tax returns are due April 15th here in the United States. So the months leading up to that period tend to be very, very busy for individuals who practice or who work in that area. So here it really means this person does not have a lot of free time. They're not going to be able to take a vacation. They're going to be working 6 or 7 days a week, which is pretty common. So tax season ties her down is an example of the simple present. I'm describing a habit or routine. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is to tie in. This can also have a couple different meanings. One could be to connect or coordinate. An example of this. The teachers will tie Black History Month in to multiple subjects. Here, will tie Black History Month is an example of the simple future. So we're talking about some teachers' plans for February. So they might incorporate some Black history maybe into art, could be into math, into history, into reading or literature, right? That's what they mean. They're going to connect it into those other subjects. A second way to use tie in is to mean to include as part of a promotional event. So this definition is very much going to connect to advertising. So an example of this. The company is tying its new chips into the release of the new superhero movie. Here's an example of a present progressive or present continuous sentence. So we have a company, they've developed maybe a new type of, I don't know if it's potato chip, tortilla chip, right? But something, it's going to be connected. Maybe it's featured in the movie. They're going to do commercials that also feature that superhero. All of that is going to be included in promoting and getting people excited to purchase this new food item. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is to tie off. This can mean to fasten, secure, seal, or close something. An example of that. He tied off the boat before greeting people on the pier. Maybe you've had this experience, but many times, right? As we're riding a boat and we get ready to get off, we need a way to secure it to make sure it doesn't start floating away, floating out in a lake or down a river as it might be. So here, what they're really saying is securing the boat. This is an example of the simple past tense. The last phrasal verb I have with my notes on this page is to tie on. This can mean that we are attaching something through that idea of rope or string or some type of contraption that's allowing us to connect. An example of this. They tied the holiday decorations on the porch's railings. Another simple past tense sentence there. Whatever these decorations might be, maybe they're wreaths or they're lights, but they're letting us know they were attached to the railing. I've got a few more phrasal verbs for us to discuss. The next is to tie together. This generally means we are fastening or securing something with a knot. An example of this. Did you tie the ends of the bag together before throwing it away? This is an example of a yes or no question in the simple past tense, right? The idea here is we don't want things falling out of the bag, right? So we're checking, did you secure it? Did you tie the ends together? The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is to tie up. This can have a few different meanings. The first is to keep someone busy or occupied. An example of this. Meetings tied me up all afternoon. Right? So maybe I had a meeting at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I might be explaining why I didn't email someone back or call them back, right? These kept me busy. That's another simple past tense sentence. A second way to use tie up can mean to block or delay something. An example of this: construction has been tying up this intersection all month. So you might hear this phrasal verb tie up used frequently to talk about traffic. Has been tying up is an example of the present perfect progressive or present perfect continuous. So we're talking about an action that started in the past and is continuing into the present. So whatever type of road work or construction that's being done here is blocking, maybe really slowing down travel through this particular area. A third way to use tie up can mean to commit something to a particular use, which means it's not available to use on something else. An example of this: she has tied her savings up in various real estate investments. This is an example of the present perfect. So in this sentence, it means someone has put money they have saved, they have invested it in real estate. So they're not able to use it to buy something or maybe invest in stocks or bonds or really do anything, right? The money is being used in this one particular way. The last phrasal verb we're going to discuss is kind of the fourth way we can use tie up, or we could use tie with. Both of these verbs go back to the fourth definition we talked about earlier. So whenever we're achieving an equal score or maybe an equal ranking. I've got two example sentences here. The first is, the visitors tied up the game just before halftime, right? So we have a home team, a visiting team. Here, the visitors made the score equal just before the halfway point. Another example might be, Mary tied with Jane for second place. So here we know the two people that achieved perhaps the same time or the same score in some type of competition. So with tie with, usually you're going to hear kind of the other competitor or competitors or other teams as it might be. Now let's move on and talk about some words that are related to our verb tie. And the first word we're going to discuss today is the noun form of this word. So tie, as a noun, has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation. Like our verb, there are many different ways to use the noun tie. I'm going to talk about 5 that I think you're more likely to see than others or hear, as it may be. So the first way the noun tie gets used is to refer to any piece of string or cord that you use to secure or fasten something. An example of this: where is the tie for the bread bag? Maybe you've noticed that or seen things, right? There's something that's closing or securing most bags of bread when you purchase them. And we can call those, sometimes they're plastic, sometimes they've got a little bit of wire, right? All of those things can be referred to as a tie. A second way to use the noun tie is to talk about wooden or concrete beams that are under railroad tracks, and they're there to provide support. To help us understand this, I've got a picture down here at the bottom. So I hope you can see with my highlighter here, right? You can see the actual rail, right? And then below it are those wooden pieces. And they're being sort of, if this is the rail, right? The ties are laid in sort of an opposite direction. That's the transversely there. Okay. An example of this in a sentence might be, they're replacing railroad ties this week. Sometimes they need to be repaired. They rot or they break down in some way. A third way to use the noun tie is to talk about material that's worn around the neck, usually tied in a knot, And most commonly, it's a formal part of a man's dress. So I've got another picture down here. Again, sometimes pictures are a lot easier than my wordy explanations. So you might hear somebody say he bought a new tie for his interview, right? We're talking about that fabric that's worn around the neck. A fourth way to use the noun tie is to refer to that equal score. So a result in some type of game or competition, and we end up kind of at the same place. An example of this: the game ended in a 2-2 tie. This just means each side maybe had 2 goals. Okay. A fifth way to use the noun tie is to talk about something that unites, links, or connects people. An example of this: their passion for nature is one of the family's ties, right? So maybe all of the people in this particular family really enjoy being outdoors. So it connects them. There are activities they like doing together, it brings them together. One more related word for us today. I want to point out that if I put a hyphen between tie up, remember that's a phrasal verb we talked about earlier, I can create a noun. And that noun generally means a crowded mass that's blocking movement or preventing movement. I feel like I hear this noun frequently as I listen to the radio or sometimes listen to morning news reports. You might hear somebody say something like, there's a tie up on the interstate near mile marker 182. So they're letting you know what area of traffic contains some type of blockage. Maybe there's been an accident, maybe there's construction, but we're really talking about something preventing others from being able to continue or move on. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.